Good afternoon and welcome everyone to the Department of Justice Coordinated Tribal Assistance Solicitation Application Checklist and Final Q&A webinar. My name is Christina and I will be your moderator for today. It is my pleasure to introduce our presenters, James Smith with the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention and Trish Thaxton with the Bureau of Justice Assistance. We also have a number of panelists from the U.S. Department of Justice from the following offices: the Bureau of Justice Assistance, Office of Community-Oriented Policing Services, Office for Victims of Crime, and Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention. Starting the webinar today will be our first presenter, James.
Good afternoon, everyone. Before I get started, I just want to say something briefly about the deadlines that I think need to be stated. I know it's been a lot of confusion about the deadlines, so I just want to reiterate what they are right now, and I will probably say them several times throughout this presentation. But your first deadline, the most important one, well, not the most important one, but one of the most important ones, is March 16th for submitting your SF-424 and your SF-LLL in grants.gov. Don't wait until the 16th. If possible, do it now. If there's any inclination that you are going to apply, you think you may apply, just go ahead and do it. And it can be an estimate on your SF-424, but try to get that in before the 16th. Before the 16th if possible, but definitely by the 16th. And then, of course, the last deadline that I want to mention is CTAS closes at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Tuesday, March 30th. You will not be able to submit an application after that point, but also know that you won't be able to submit an application if you don't do the first part of registering in grants.gov by March 16th. We'll cover more about that later. If you have any questions about that, put them in the chat box. But again, get your grants.gov information filled out as soon as possible. Today, we're going to focus a little bit on an overview of the purpose areas that are in CTAS this year, application requirements and how you apply, and tips and resources. Some of this you've heard on previous webinars, but we want to reiterate to make sure that you are in good shape for submitting your application for this year. Next, I'm going to cover the purpose areas of CTAS, and let me just make one statement before I do that. I know oftentimes, you know, those of you who've had CTAS grants before, you think of CTAS as being a program. It's not a program. It's basically just the structure in which 7 separate grant programs function. All of the funding streams are separate. So just wanted to make sure that you are aware of that. CTAS is just basically our way of trying to offer you a one-stop shop, or as close to that as possible. Basically how it works is you look at the solicitation, you familiarize yourself with it, and you determine out of the programs and the funding areas that are available, which ones most address your needs, or you think that you're eligible to apply for based on the eligibility requirements and what the funding can be used for. This year, because it's our first year using Just Grants, our new system that replaced GMS, for those of you who may be older grantees, we're encouraging you not only to look at the solicitation, but also if you go to the Tribal Safety and Justice website, there's a document directly under the solicitation that's called a Purpose Area Spotlight document. And that gives you kind of the meat and potatoes of everything related to each purpose area in CTAS. And I would encourage you to look at the solicitation and read that document very carefully to make sure that you have the right impressions about which each purpose area is about and what you're going to apply for. So kind of use those documents hand in hand when you're making your decisions about which purpose area you're going to apply to, and then as you're working on your application as well. It'd be great to have both of those handy. I won't insult you by reading these areas, but these are kind of some overarching highlights of things in which the purpose areas fund and what they're focused on for CTAS. The components involved in CTAS are the COPS Office, Community-Oriented Policing Services, Bureau of Justice Assistance, BJA, Office for Victims of Crime, OVC, and Office of Juvenile Justice Delinquency and Prevention, OJJDP. COPS Purpose Area 1. The goal is to expand the implementation of community policing and meet the most serious needs of law enforcement and tribal nations through a broad and comprehensive approach. And for the COPS purpose area, there's several things that you can seek funding for, and we'll get into that a little bit more, but just wanted you to briefly know what that's about. For Purpose Area 2, the goal is to initiate a broad assessment of the tribe's current criminal justice system, and to then produce a comprehensive plan to further develop and enhance the justice system. We kind of look at Purpose Area 2, for those of you who may be new to CTAS or not as familiar with it, it's kind of a way to get you started in the right direction. So we often encourage tribes who may not necessarily be ready to apply to other purpose areas to kind of do this first, and it kind of helps you with the other purpose areas. Purpose Area 3, the goal is to assist tribes to develop, support, and enhance the adult tribal justice systems and the ability to prevent crime. This purpose area is produced and managed by BJA, the Bureau of Justice Assistance at OJP. Purpose Area 4 is also the Bureau of Justice Assistance, BJA, and the goal is to assist tribes with building justice system infrastructure capacity by providing funding to support the renovation and or expansion of existing facilities and establishments of prefabricated or permanent modular buildings. We also have a number of documents in the miscellaneous section that talk a little bit more about things that you can do in Purpose Area 4 and things that are allowable. So if you are interested in that, I encourage you to read those documents as well. Purpose Area 6 belongs to the Office for Victims of Crime, that's OVC. The goal is to provide funding, training, and tribal and technical assistance help to tribal communities develop, establish, and operate programs designed to improve the investigation, prosecution, and handling of cases of criminal child abuse and neglect, particularly child abuse cases, in a manner designed to minimize trauma for child victims and their family. I know that that's a lot there, but I strongly encourage you to read, if you're interested in the Purpose Area 6, to read it specifically. There's a lot of great work you can do in there. So I don't want you to get caught up in just everything you see here. Just read it thoroughly to find out exactly what you're able to do. And if you have questions, we have folks on the line who work specifically with this Purpose Area. Purpose Area 8 and 9 belong to the Office of Juvenile Justice, Delinquency, and Prevention, better known as OJJDP. Purpose Area 8 supports tribes seeking to establish a new or enhance an existing juvenile tribal healing to wellness court to respond to alcohol and substance abuse use issues, including opioid use of juveniles and young adults under the age of 21. And for those of you who've been on our other webinars or may have already started to work on the solicitation of your application and read materials, you may have noticed that both in Purpose Area 3 and Purpose Area 8, you're able to request healing to wellness courts. So just wanted to let you know that you were right on target with that. That is not an uncommon thing. For Purpose Area 9, it supports and enhances tribal efforts to prevent and reduce juvenile delinquency and strengthen a fair and beneficial juvenile justice system response for American Indian and Alaska tribal youth. CTAS application requirements and how to apply for funding is what we're going to cover next. So I'm going to reiterate some deadlines again. For those of you who are just joining, we opened on January 19th. Again, grants.gov deadline, and what we mean by grants.gov deadline is going into grants.gov and submitting your SF424, which can be an estimate because we will fix it on the back end in Just Grants, and submitting your SFLLL. Do those things as soon as possible. If you have time, I would even do them today as soon as you get off of this webinar. Or if you're great at multitasking, do it while you're on the webinar. We just want to make sure that you get it done. If you even think for a second that you're going to apply, please just do it. And you don't want to wait to the last day to do it because it can take up to 72 hours for grants.gov to let you know that your forms have either been rejected or approved. So you don't want to be doing that on the last day and risk not being able to apply to CTAS. So again, do it today or sometime before the 16th, or definitely by the 16th. The solicitation itself closes on Tuesday, March 30th at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We expect, as always, to make awards for this solicitation period by or before September 30th of this year, and all project start dates should be on or after October 1 of 2021. Time for a poll question.
Great, thanks, James. And our question today is, have you completed the first step, submitting your SF424 and SFLLL of the application process in grants.gov? And as you can see from our results, 48% have indicated they have completed the first step, 40% have not, and 13% are unsure.
Christina, thank you for the poll question. For those of you who've already gotten it in, great job. For those of you that's just a definite no, that's going to be your homework for after this call to get that done. And for those of you who are unsure, we encourage you, if you are not the person that's going to be submitting the application, to reach out to the folks in your agency that normally submit the application to see if they've started or if they need help in getting that started. But we're going to task everybody with getting that done because this is new to CTAS this year, and we want to make sure that you understand that that is a very important piece and that you will not be able to apply if that piece is not done. Who is eligible to apply under CTAS? Traditionally, federally recognized Indian tribal governments, tribal consortia, and tribal designees are eligible for Purpose Area 6 applicants only. And if you are applying to Purpose Area 6, you will need to include a tribal resolution or some type of document that resembles that, and that document needs to be signed and dated for the appropriate year related to, because it's not just enough to turn it in. If it's not signed or if it has another year on it, it's going to be invalid. So you want to make sure that it's correct and that it's actually signed and has the correct date. If you don't get that in and you are awarded, you risk your funds, your entire award funds being frozen until we get that in. So just want to make sure if you're a designee that you understand that part of it. Required documents. So there's a number of things you're going to be submitting, as you're familiar with when you do any type of grant application for a federal agency, but I want to time into a couple of things for this. So there's we have 4 listed here, and all 4 are important, but out of the 4, there are 3 that you must you must make sure that you have. So tribal community and justice profile, that's worth 20% of your score. You only have to do that once. You don't have to do it if you're applying for more than one purpose area. The one form serves the purpose whether you apply for one purpose area or multiple. So you only do that once. Purpose area narrative, that has to be submitted for each purpose area you're applying for, and it's worth 60% of your score. It's a big piece of your score. So if you decide that you want to apply to Purpose Area 1, Purpose Area 3, and Purpose Area 6, and Purpose Area 8, then that should be 4 project or Purpose Area narrative documents that you are submitting to answer questions for each of those purpose areas. And you can find on the Tribal Safety and Justice website, each purpose area has its purpose area narrative template, in which you will go in. You can either use that template and type in your responses there, or if you choose to use your own format, you need to make sure that you answer the questions that are there fully. So I would recommend, and you don't have to do this, but just what I would offer to you as advice is if you want to take the questions out, answer the document or complete the template first with the questions in there so you can make sure that you've addressed all, and then you can go back and delete it and just leave like the question number. That's the best way to ensure that you didn't forget to answer something if you're adamant about not having the questions in the template. And I know some folks don't like to leave that in there. The timeline is very important too. We give you a template there to use. We ask that you use that. And I would also say for the budget detail workbook and narrative, that's 15% of the score. What's new this year is normally there's a demographic form in that Excel template that's geared for the COPS office. This year, those questions are in Just Grants already, so they're not going to be in the budget detail workbook. And for those of you who want to be proactive and get an early start on what those questions are, if you go to the Tribal Safety and Justice website CTAS page, under the miscellaneous section at the bottom, there's a document there that says demographic form questions for COPS. You can look that up and you read those questions, or if you need us to send it to you, send an email to tribalgrants@usdoj.gov and we can make sure that you get that. But what I want to say again about this section, out of these 4 documents, the Tribal Community and Justice Profile, the Purpose Area Narrative, and the Budget Detail Workbook and Narrative. If either one of those documents are missing, your application will not move forward to peer review, and you would have essentially wasted your time in completing an application because it's not going to go anywhere. You'll get a rejection letter telling you that your application failed BMR, which is basic minimum requirements, and because it didn't have these things in there. So just triple check that you have these documents. If it's more than one purpose area, then you need to make sure that the purpose area narrative, it's for the amount of purpose areas that you're applying for. Even though the EXO worksheet is one workbook, there's different tabs for each purpose area. And so you need to make sure, if you're applying to 4 purpose areas, that there are 4 budgets or 4 tabs filled out on there. I would also say in this section, and I know I'm spending a little time on here, but this section is very important, and we see this every year, so I want to be very adamant so that no one misses out on anything. It's not only enough to make sure that you submit these, make sure that you submit what you intend to submit. And what I mean by that is, if you submit a purpose area narrative or a tribal and community justice profile, and it's in track changes and it's not the version you meant and it has all kinds of notes and comments, that is what we have to accept. We are not allowed to alter, accept, or do anything. We have to take the document as is. And I'm pretty sure you wouldn't want a peer reviewer or us to read a document that's not well polished. So just make sure it's the final document. The other thing I would also say about this too is, if you're submitting a purpose area narrative for, I'm going to make this up, for purpose area 1, make sure that it's in fact purpose area 1's narrative. And because if you're applying to multiple purpose areas and you make the mistake of submitting the same purpose area narrative for each one accidentally, we're going to feel really bad for you, but there's nothing we can do about that. So again, not only make sure that you have these documents, but make sure you have the correct versions and they are what you're intending to submit. If you have any questions about that, please reach out to us. We can clarify even more. But it's very important that you pay attention to this section. And that's why we're encouraging you not to rush to try to get your application in 2 weeks or a week in advance, so you can have time to thoroughly review your application, check your attachments, and make sure that you are submitting exactly what you intend to submit. So the tribal community and justice profile should not exceed 10 pages. We streamlined it this year and got rid of a lot of the duplicate questions, so it should be possible for you to answer everything you need to answer in 10 pages. And I want to be very clear too, because we often get this question. Just because we say 10 pages, it doesn't mean that you have to do 10 pages. Most people do. We gave 10 pages and we thought that was a fair amount for what we're asking you to provide. But don't think that you're going to be penalized if you feel like you've said what you needed to say in 8 or 9 pages versus 10. That is completely okay. You just know that you have up to 10 pages to say what you feel you need to say, and that'll be fine with us. Purpose area narrative spotlight document. This is a document that I mentioned earlier on that you want to have hand in hand with the solicitation. For those of you who are used to applying for CTAS and have applied over the last couple of years, when you see this document, you will see that this document was kind of like the meat and potatoes that were in our previous versions of solicitations. So we thought it was very important that you still get to see that. So again, strongly encourage you, as you're deciding and looking at the solicitation, also to look at this document so you can make an informed decision about which purpose areas fit your needs and what you're going to apply to. And you're also going to want to have this document handy as you're going through and applying to the purpose areas that you want to apply to. Look at this as just as important as the actual solicitation document itself. Purpose area narrative. So if you go to each purpose area narrative, you're going to see that there's a range. And I know that this sample in here isn't correct, but if you go to the purpose area narrative documents, each template for each purpose area you're choosing to apply to, they're all going to say from a range of 10 to 15 pages. So what that means is, we've recognized over the last couple of years that Some of our applicants like to write in around 10 pages. Some people fell in between, and some people liked having 15. So we wanted to try to accommodate everybody as much as possible and saying, you know, if you didn't feel like you could do 15 or needed 15, that's fine. But no, the same rules apply. If you feel like you can say what you need to say in 9 pages, that's totally up to you. You know your problem and the issues that's facing your tribal community better than we do. And so you know what amount of space you need to say it. We don't want you to feel like if you don't reach 15 or you don't reach 10, that you're going to get penalized for that. You will not get penalized for that. So we just want to be very clear. It's just, we don't want you to go over a certain number, but do whatever you need to do until you get up to that certain number. And again, I'm sure most of you know what a purpose area narrative document is, but I'll just be very clear to reiterate that some more. So in here, you're going to look at the narrative questions. You're going to answer the questions that each purpose area is asking you to address. And you want to do those very clear, very direct. You want to be very clear about answering those questions. And again, as I mentioned earlier, if you don't want to keep the questions in, I would highly recommend that you answer and complete the template first with the questions in there and triple check that you answered everything. And then if you want to remove them for more space, be my guest. But what you don't want to do is delete them right away and assume that you've answered everything and make a mistake. We've seen that time and time again. The timeline. So the timeline is very important. We know it's only worth 5%, but it's a very important 5% because it paints a picture for us of how you're going to go about accomplishing the things that you list in your budget, the activities and items that you list in your budget, as well as how you lay out your project and your program in your purpose area narrative. This lets us know who's going to be responsible for what and what time frame you're going to get what done, what your deliverables are. And not only is it a good tool for us in deciding who we're going to award, the same tool that you're creating for us kind of puts you ahead of the game if you get awarded, because now you already have a timeline that you can kind of tweak if need be to help you implement your project throughout the life of the grant. So look at it as kind of like a 2-for-1. It can help you get awarded, but it also is helping you if you do get awarded. And again, only 5%, but a very, very important 5%. And so I don't want you to think of it as being insignificant. It is extremely important. It speaks to your capacity to manage a project. The budget detail workbook. All right, this is very important. First thing I'm going to say about this is if you go to the website and you click on it and you open it up, download it to your computer, wherever you're working, 9 times out of 10, it is probably going to ask you if you want to enable the macros. That is a hard yes. You definitely want to do that. Not doing that usually creates lots of problems for folks, like they can't fill out certain things or formulas don't work. Definitely enable the macros on this. If it doesn't ask you, you can either Google or search and help how to do it and just check to make sure that it's already enabled. It may be something on your computer when you open it up that it's already enabled, but you want to check to make sure that it is if it doesn't ask you to do it. But in most cases, it does ask you to do it. We've tested these workbooks several times and we test it every year. So, you know, you enter your information, for the most part, it'll add up for you, but you just want to double check your math, make sure that your requests are supported, make sure that you have narratives in there to support. Like if you're going to ask for 15 laptops and you're going to list them at a certain price, we need to see a narrative in the budget. But not only do we need to see that, when we get over to your purpose area narrative, we need to see some reference in there as well. So basically your budget and your purpose area narrative need to work hand in hand somewhat. So, you know, we need to understand why you're asking for these things and how they're going to be used. If you feel like there is not enough space in the budget itself for you to do your budget narrative, I know sometimes grantees like to give a lot of detail. You have some options. You can either you can do it in there, which we recommend, but like I said, if you feel like you need more space and you're not going to do it in there, what I recommend that you do is say, please see additional attachment with budget narratives, and then make sure that there's an attachment uploaded in Just Grants that says budget narrative or budget justifications. So then when we're looking for this, we can go in and say, okay, we see in their budget that they didn't want to write it in here, but they left us a note that said, see detailed budget attachment, and we can go there and we can find that. We have seen grantees do that before because they feel like they need more space, and that's perfectly fine. You just have to indicate to us and be very clear about that. But if you can get it within the Excel spreadsheet, we'd rather you do that, but you have the other option if you feel like it's not enough space. Definitely stay within the budget time frame. All awards are 3 or 5 years, so make sure that you allocate for that. If you are putting in a position, you need to put the position title. You don't necessarily need to know who the person is. You can put TBD for that, but you always need to put what the position is, what the title of the position is. We don't want to see budgets that say to be announced for the person's name and for the position, because those will get kicked back if you get awarded, and they'll take forever to get approved. And we'll have to do a bunch back and forth. So we're trying to eliminate some of that. But the budget is very important. Again, if you're applying for more than one purpose area, then we want to see multiple tabs filled out. Also, when you're done, especially whether you've done one purpose area or multiple, look at the budget summary page, because it gives you a quick overview, a quick snapshot of all the categories that you filled out for each purpose area and the total. So that way you can make sure that you haven't exceeded the cap and that you filled in all the areas that you wanted to fill in. So I strongly encourage you to do that. And just, you don't want to forget to attach this, because you will not move forward to peer review or the next phase in the application process if this is not attached. The last thing I'll say about this, and I always save this for last, is you do not have to use the budget detail workbook that we created for you. We strongly encourage you to and strongly prefer that you do, but you don't have to. If you choose to use some other format, I would recommend that you either have another monitor up with this template there or print it out. So as you're creating your other format to submit the budget, you are looking at our template and making sure that you are including everything that we're asking for. Would be my only caveat if you choose to do your own format. And if you choose to do your own format, make sure it's a very clear file name. Like, make sure that we know it's a budget, basically. Reminders when you're drafting key documents. A lot of times, people think that the more, advanced vocabulary or highfalutin vocabulary you use, the more impressive. Just be simple and concise language. Be organized, be realistic about the goals you want to achieve. I would say get feedback beforehand. This is why I'm saying try to do your application a week or two in advance, so that everybody that worked on the application, and I would recommend that everybody who worked on the application come together, and maybe even for giggles, pull someone in who hasn't done any work on the application and let them review it too, because it's always good to have a fresh set of eyes. But basically, you guys act like your own peer reviewer for your own application. Look at the solicitation and the checklist and see where your application measures up. And if you feel like it falls short in any areas, you have time to address that without rushing before your actual application is due to us. That is a great practice that I recommend that you all try. And at the end of the day, make sure that you're looking at the purpose area, goals and objectives, and the requirements of each purpose area. Even though this is one solicitation and it's aiming to kind of be a version of a one-stop shop, it's different funding streams, and so different purpose areas have different requirements, and you want to make sure that you are meeting those things. What your application should include. Along with the 3 required documents that I mentioned earlier, and I will reiterate those again, that's your tribal and community and justice profile. You only have to have one of those, regardless of how many purpose areas you're applying for. Your budget detail workbook, which a tab needs to be filled out for every single purpose area you're applying, and then your purpose area or project narrative, which we provided a template for. You have to do one of those for each purpose area in which you're applying for. So if it's 4 purpose areas, 4 separate purpose area narratives, using the templates and answering the questions that each office has asked for. The application cover sheet is where you're going to do an abstract, and we want you to take the abstracts very seriously. We should be able to look at these abstracts and get a clear picture of what you want to do in a very brief format. We've went as far as to give you sample language to use, where you can kind of fill in stuff. You can use that if you want, or you can do your own, but just make sure that when we look at that, we want to know exactly why you're asking for this funding, what you're looking to do. Like, we should be able to tell that in that brief little area. Don't use it as an opportunity to like, don't use it as an opportunity to talk about anything other than what your project is going to be about. Sometimes we see abstracts that don't make a lot of sense. We don't want you to do that. Look at the template language that we've provided in there and try to follow that. But otherwise, at the end of the day, it should be a quick snapshot, a quick and meaningful snapshot of what it is you're trying to do. And that's often helpful to our leadership. It's often helpful for us when we're trying to make quick decisions about things. So yeah, don't forget that. Disclosure high risk status, application disclosure pending active applications. If you're applying the Purpose Area 6, as I mentioned earlier, you'll need a tribal resolution or a tribal authority to apply the document. Same kind of thing, basically. If you're including indirect costs, this is very important. We need a current indirect cost agreement. We know that sometimes it can take a while for you guys to get that, and sometimes it expires by the time you are awarded or shortly thereafter. It is your job to make sure that you are always keeping us up to date on your latest indirect cost rate. If you get awarded and we don't have an indirect cost rate, that portion of your funds will be frozen and you will not have access to it until we get a current indirect cost agreement that is actually signed and references the correct years. It can't be one that's expired. So that's what I'll say on that. That's really important. It's also important that you do the Financial Management and System of Internal Controls questionnaire, not for Purpose Area 1 though, but for all of the other purpose areas. Other attachments as needed, prior OBC approved strategic plan or logic model, and resumes for key personnel. Some of these things you can determine, or job descriptions as you want to add them. Sometimes folks like to paint a clear picture for us. Those type of things are fine as well. I would just say with any of your attachments, to make it easy on yourself, I would use the names that we are calling them here. If you do not, use something that's very similar so it won't be a problem for us to figure out what it is. There's oftentimes, as we're reviewing and evaluating applications, that we need to quickly jump in to see what something is, and it would be helpful if an easy file name was there. It helps us determine if something is missing or what we needed. So with the application cover sheet, we ask you not to exceed 500 words. We give you sample verbiage language in there for how you can go about doing your abstract. Again, try to follow that. If you use your own format, that's fine, but make sure it kind of paints a brief picture of your project's purpose, the population being served, and the activities that you will implement and kind of your goals and objectives. Applicant disclosure of high risk status document. If an applicant is currently designated as a high risk designee, you need to list that. This is how you go about it. Here are the things that we need. You can all ask us at the end of this or reach out to us if you're working on your application. So applicant disclosure of pending active award documents. So basically want to know if you're about to get some awards or currently have some, and so you'll go here, you'll fill out this information, and it just helps us in our decision making. I can use it for a variety of different things. So just make sure that you get that in. Moving on to Financial Management and Systems of Control questionnaire. The link for it is here. It's also on the Tribal Safety and Justice website, and we've also linked to it in the solicitation. So there's a couple of different ways you can find that. So yeah, just make sure that you complete that as well. How to apply for the CTAS 2021 application. This part is extremely important. So as I mentioned before, grants.gov is new to CTAS this year. So we kind of have a whole two-step approach for submitting your application for CTAS 2021. The first step is grants.gov, and that is where you're gonna fill out your SF-424. Do not worry or panic. It can be an estimate. You can even put $1. It's gonna get changed on the back end. Do not stress about it at all. And your SF-LLL in grants.gov. You want to make sure that you do this. Again, I hate sounding like a broken record, but it's just very important. And I'd rather repeat it way too many times than someone to miss out on this. You have to do this step or you will not be able to submit your CTAS application. You need to allow yourself enough time to hear back from grants.gov on whether or not your submittal has been rejected or accepted. It can take as long as 72 hours, but we've been hearing people hear back around sometimes 24 to 48 hours. But you guys are going to be rock stars and you're not going to wait that long. As soon as you get done with this webinar, you're going to go do it if you haven't done it already, or you're going to make sure that it's due by the 16th. So this is the first step, very important there. We have links in the solicitation for grants.gov, for grants.gov materials and who you contact with grants.gov if you have any issues. There's FAQs. I know that we've also sent out emails for information like that as well. So again, this is step one, very important step. Make sure you do it as soon as possible. You definitely want to double check your SF424. Make sure you're selecting the right information. You're entering your legal name as it appears in SAMS, and please do that. We often have a lot of problems with legal names. Make sure that you are entering what's in SAMS, because oftentimes we'll have to come back with questions if we can't figure something out. The end and start dates are there. I know we say here that it must match. For CTAS, it's a little different because most cases folks are applying to multiple purpose areas, but grants.gov only allows you to submit one SF424. And so that's why we're saying it can be an estimate. Regardless, even if you're only doing one purpose area, don't stress about it. It can still be an estimate and it will get fixed later on. I promise you that. We will work with you on that. Your authorized representative must be someone who has an authority to accept the award on behalf of your tribe. So it should not be your grant writer. It should not be the person that fixes your computers or your phones or any of that nature. It shouldn't be the person that's out working with it should be the person that has signing authority. Now, if it happens to be that person, then cool, but in most cases it's not. So, just make sure that it's the appropriate person that's able to sign your award. So next, step 2, applicants must submit their full application and just grants. You're gonna get an email, like I said, from grants.gov that lets you know if your submittal of your SF424 and your SFLL has been accepted or rejected. Once you get that and it's been accepted, then you can move forward with doing your application in just grants. But if you get a rejection, then you need to do whatever the email is telling you need to fix in order to move forward first and wait for for it to be accepted. That's why it's very important that you don't want to wait a day before, 2 days before, 3 days before, at the minimum a week. But that's why we're trying to tell you to do this now, so you'll know if there is a problem and you can resolve it ahead of time. So CTAS applicants, we strongly recommend that applicants use descriptive file names. As I was mentioning earlier, try to use the titles or the file names or the names of documents that we've given you in the solicitation so that there is no confusion about what is being used at all. Tips and resources. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Trish Thaxton, who will take over at this point.
Thank you, James. Good afternoon, everyone. Glad to have you here. We're going to go through some tips and resources for submitting a CTAS application now. Information about CTAS, including solicitation announcements and training and technical assistance opportunities, can be found on the DOJ tribal website, which is justice.gov/tribal. And on the open solicitation page there, as well as the training and technical assistance page, you can sign up for email notifications when any information on those pages is updated, which will include things like new solicitations being announced. And I do highly recommend that you take a moment to go ahead and get signed up for our email list so that you are getting all of the most current information as soon as it's released. This is our last webinar for the 2020 season, or 2021 season, sorry about that. But the recordings of all of the webinars, including this one, will be available online at youtube.com/CTAS /user/OJPOCOM. Also on the Tribal Justice website, we have our CTAS online guide. This is an online guide to writing grant applications that should help you to think through and prepare for all the areas of planning your program and your application, including an entire section on budget. We encourage you to use this guide for more in-depth details on what we've briefly gone over here today. Each section is rich with information, interactive, and includes downloadable worksheets and tools that you can use to help put together your very best proposal. The guide is not a requirement for getting funded, and it won't directly increase your likelihood of getting funded, but what it does do is help you to plan and organize so that you can write your very best proposal. Each relevant DOJ component may use either internal or external peer reviewers. External peer reviewers or a combination to review the applications under the solicitation. An external peer reviewer is an expert in the field of the given grant program who's not currently a federal employee. An internal reviewer is a current federal employee who is well-versed or has an expertise in the subject matter of a particular grant program. OJP is currently seeking external peer reviewers to assess grant applications. Reviewers should have a relevant expertise and experience related either to public safety, criminal and juvenile justice, or relevant crime victimizations. Reviewers will participate remotely and will not be required to attend any in-person meetings. Participants will review and score between 5 to 15 applications within a 2-week period, and reviewers are also required to participate in an orientation call before beginning their review. Reviewers are paid $125 for each application reviewed. If you're interested in becoming a peer reviewer, please submit an up-to-date resume or CV, including a valid email address. And for your subject line, please write peer reviewer candidate resume. And you can see the email address there on your screen. That's tribalgrants@usdoj.gov. This is just your checklist of the items that you're going to be uploading for your application: your tribal community and justice profile, the purpose area narrative, the purpose area timeline, budget detail worksheet and narrative, the application cover sheet, tribal authority to apply, which is only for tribal designees, the financial management and systems of controls, the applicant disclosure of pending applications and active awards, the applicant disclosure of high-risk status, the indirect cost rate agreement, if applicable, and any other attachments that you wish to have us consider with your application. And these will all be uploaded in JustGrants. I just have a few grant writing tips here for all of you to keep in mind and consider as you're going through the process. Unless otherwise noted, the program narrative should be double-spaced using a standard 12-point font with 1-inch margins. Each solution does specify exactly what guidelines you need to be adhered to, and so you want to read the solicitation itself very carefully. As James discussed a short time ago, make sure that your file names make sense, and make sure that your file names include the tribe name. It really does make a huge difference when we are reviewing applications and when peer reviewers are reviewing applications, to make sure that they are able to, and we are able to, find every single item that you uploaded. So you don't want us to miss anything that you've put time and effort into creating. Again, read the solicitation really carefully. Make sure that you have met all the requirements that are identified in the solicitation. Be sure that all of the items in your budget are allowable and reasonable, and that your calculations are correct. And make sure that in your budget narrative, you're being really clear in defining each of the items and why they're necessary, and just making things very, very clear. For example, in a travel budget, you want to indicate the details of the travel plans and outline them. If you've got equipment, you want to be sure to clarify what equipment you're requesting and why you're requesting it. If you have consultants, be very clear as to what those consultants are for and why they are necessary to completing the project. These are just a number of important websites to keep in mind. And when you are completing your CTAS solicitation, this very first URL here at the top of the page, justice.gov/tribal open solicitations, that is where all of the documents that you need to download in order to be able to complete your application are located. So that's a really crucial link to be aware of and to use, so that you make sure you have all of the proper documents to complete your application. If you need assistance in submitting your application, we have a number of help desks available. You'll see this first link is for the grants.gov customer support webpage, email, and telephone numbers. If you're having issues with that first step, as James described in grants.gov, you can go ahead and reach out to the grants.gov support. They are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, other than federal holidays. And once you've completed that and you're in the Just Grant system, this next section is all of your contact information for the Just Grant support staff. And the help desk for Just Grants operates 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Time, Monday through Friday, and 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Time, Saturdays, Sundays, and federal holidays. And then this is our general mailbox. You're certainly welcome to reach out to individual staff as well. But if you have a question related to the content of the solicitation, things that may or may not be allowable, and so forth, the tribal grants at usdoj.gov is going to be your single point to reach out to us, and those requests will be forwarded to the appropriate staff person to answer your question. So that's a great place to get specific information. The DOJ Response Center, you can call as well, and they will either answer your question or put you in touch with the correct staff person to answer that question. And they're available Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Time, except for federal holidays. I guess, do we have any questions at this point before we go on?
We do have our first questions, and our first two questions are regarding the grants.gov and Just Grants application process. And the first question is, our forms went through grants.gov, and now when I look at the application in Just Grants, I'm showing the wrong application submitter. The entity administrator is not the AOR listed on the forms we submitted. How can we correct this?
So I guess my first question to that person would be, is the person who actually submitted the forms the same names that were on the form? Because I know in earlier webinars we were very adamant about saying, making sure that the person who's submitting the stuff and grants.gov and on the form all match up. So I guess I just need to understand, is it that someone submitted it and then the people on the form are different from the person that submitted it? That would help us understand. If that person could maybe send me a direct email so we can kind of work that offline, and I'll make sure that they get an answer to their question. If you're listening, my email address is james.a.smith@usdoj.gov. Just send me a very detailed email with your question, what the issue is. Let me know if the person that submitted your stuff in grants.gov is the same person as that's listed on the forms, or if it's different, because that'll be part of the troubleshooting. But I promise, we'll get an answer. Just email me offline about it.
Great, thank you, James. And we have another question, and this individual has been experiencing some unresolved errors in Just Grants for about a month. They were advised by Just Grants to notify the CTAS POC that there were issues, and Just Grants asked that they reached out to see if there are any alternatives. They did email the tribal grants at USDOJ.gov email address to see if there's a better contact so that they can appropriately follow Just Grants directions for them to reach out. They're getting a little nervous because they haven't heard back, and the deadline is coming up soon. They're hoping to resolve the Just Grants error, and they want to know if they need to do a new grants.gov app or if they need to do anything different. Just Grants said that they would get back to them, but they haven't heard back in 2 weeks, and we're getting very close to the deadline. Any advice?
So for this particular person, I know I've seen emails back and forth about an error issue. I'm not sure if it's the actual person that's asking this question now, but for the person who is asking this question now, I'm going to ask you to do something. Send an email again to tribalgrants@usdoj.gov. CC me, james.a.smith@usdoj.gov. Be very specific and when the issue first happened, what is occurring, include screenshots, and how long it's been that you haven't heard a resolution, because I'm going to try and get this escalated for you. But it will be very helpful in me getting it escalated if you include the information that I'm asking for, because I will probably get asked those things. So I kind of want to be proactive. That way I don't have to do a lot of emails back and forth.
And this is Melissa, and thank you, James, for that. And I don't know if this is the same error that this person is talking about, but if this person is talking about this broken promise error that I believe has also been shared with us for the past month, I do also believe that that has been escalated, and the Just Grants team is also working on that. They call it a bug. So if you are that person that is experiencing that broken promise error, I believe that they are trying to fix it. That's all. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, James and Melissa. And does only one timeline file need to be submitted for the multiple purpose areas, or do we need to have multiple files or a timeline for each purpose area?
So yes, you need to do a timeline for each purpose area, but we'll leave it up to you how you want to do it. In the template, we put like a space for each purpose area where if you start to type into the document and you do what you need to do for one purpose area, it just spaces down the other purpose area. And then when you're done with one, you could go into the other. If you choose to do it on one continuous document, that is fine. However, if you choose to have the template, like if you're applying to 3 different purpose areas and you choose to use the template one time and label it purpose area 1 timeline, and then save the template again and name it purpose area 3, and that's totally fine too. Just be very clear when you're labeling it so we'll know that you use the template multiple times for different purpose areas and that it's not one continuous document. If it is one continuous document, just be very clear in the file name the purpose areas that are represented in that one file. That's how we saw it last year. And so we're perfectly fine with you doing it in one continuous document or separating it, whatever you feel is easier for you.
Thank you, James.
But I definitely will reiterate James's comment that if you do one continuous document, be certain that the file name specifies timeline for purpose areas 1, 3, 6, whatever it is, but make sure they're all identified there so that it doesn't get missed and mistakenly thought that you didn't include a timeline for a particular purpose area.
Thank you, Trish. And for the tribal narrative, in the presentation, it showed 5 questions, but the template online only has 3 questions. Can you clarify how many questions we should be answering?
I'm almost certain, and I'm double checking, I'm almost certain it's just 3 questions. That screenshot was probably from last year, so we apologize for that. It's definitely 3 questions. The screenshot was just from a previous version, so we apologize for that, but it is definitely 3.
Great, thank you, James. And for purpose area number 1, I noticed that PA1 does not allow you to give a full budget narrative for equipment. Is this an error, or do we need to address the equipment narrative in the purpose area narrative?
Hello, this is Melissa with Purpose Area 1. Please enable the budget worksheet and address your Purpose Area 1 request in the Purpose Area 1 tab. There's actually only 4 sections: equipment, supplies, other costs. I don't remember the other one offhand, but I'll get back to you. That we disabled the 4 bigger narrative boxes in order to allow you to enter the information that you need in the line item description. So it looks like it's grayed out or not allowing you to enter the information. And if you see that, that's only because we wanted you instead to put your justification, the who, the what, the why, in the line item description box instead. We feel that's a sufficient amount of space for you to enter your justification. And there are just 4 boxes: equipment, supplies, other costs. And if you give me a minute, I can pull up my email to figure out what the other one is.
Melissa, this is Ann.
Thank you.
I blocked out travel, equipment, supplies, and other costs. The larger narrative box, you're welcome, is grayed out. You cannot enter data into those. Please enter it into the item narrative box. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Ann, and thank you, Melissa. And our next question is regarding the indirect cost rate, and is using the de minimis indirect cost rate of 10% okay?
I can try answering this. This is Dara from VJA. I think it should be, if you do not have a current indirect cost rate agreement and are not in the process of negotiating one, I believe you can use the de minimis rate of 10%. You are, you're not required to, and even if you have, you can use less than your approved indirect cost rate agreement. But yes, if you don't have an indirect cost rate agreement, you can use the de minimis rate.
Great, thank you, Dara. And James, during your presentation, they're looking for some clarifying information. Can you clarify what was meant by using the names that we're calling them here in the attachments resumes for key personnel? I was not clear what you meant with using the names that we're calling them for attachments and resumes for key personnel.
Okay, what I think they're talking about I'm going to answer this question 2 ways because I'm not sure which way they're asking, but I think I know where the question is coming from. So first I'll say, if your question's in regard to when I was talking about the budget, and I was saying if you have a position listed there, and in the budget, it's going to ask you for the position title and it's going to ask you for the person's name. It's okay if you don't know the person's name and you just put TBD, but it's never okay if you don't put a position there. A position always has to be listed there, regardless if you know the person's name or not. So if you were talking about that, that is what I meant. If you were talking about the file names, I simply meant that if you're uploading attachments, which you have to upload attachments, please just make sure whenever possible to try to call the attachments that you're uploading the same names that we are using in the solicitation for these documents. Whatever documents you're attaching, you're attaching them because we're asking for them. And I'm just asking that you use the file names or the titles of the documents that we give you in the solicitation so it's easy for us to identify. Wasn't sure which way you were going, so I answered that in both ways I thought. If that's not what you wanted to know, please reach back out.
Great, thank you, James. And our next question is regarding Purpose Area 4. If we would like to use 100% of the funding for our program activities, can we elect to not charge indirect costs? In our case, Purpose Area 4, we would like to use all the funds towards the PA4 renovation construction costs.
Yes, hello. This is Julius Dupree with the Bureau of Justice Assistance. And to respond to that question is you can use all your funds to, well, you can use most of your funds to support the renovation or, expansion or permanent modular or whatever project that you're going to be implementing. But, please be sure to make sure that you do budget funds for the travel, for like an orientation. So just be sure to include that as part of your budget as well. But I also want to make clear that none of our funds can be used for operational costs. So, once the facility is built, then, if you want to use our funds to actually continue operations while you're, renovating or expanding, then you cannot use our funds for that operational purpose. So I hope to make that clear. But if you're looking for programming costs, you may want to look towards Purpose Area 3 that has a lot of different programming related to treatment, reentry, whatever the case may be.
And just to reiterate what this was saying,
yeah.
If you're going to use all of your funds for construction and not apply your indirect cost rate agreement if you have one, that's fine. Or you don't even have, if you say you have an indirect cost rate of 20%, but only want to charge 13%, that's okay. Please make sure that you do remark that in your budget if you're not charging your full amount of indirect. But you're not required to use your indirect cost rate agreement, but you are allowed to.
Great. Thank you, Dara, and thank you, Julius. And for our next question, for the SF424, we can put in $1 for the initial submission, but then do we need to go back and change it to the correct amount later?
No. So as long as you're talking about in grants.gov. In grants.gov, you'll submit that just really any estimate you want. Doesn't matter what the amount is, because that allows you to get over to Just Grants. In Just Grants, you will submit an SF424 for each purpose area that you're applying. And that's the amount that will follow the application. What was in grants.gov is just to get you in to Just Grants.
Great, thank you, Trish. And is it possible to address questions 15 through 20 on the application, please?
Questions 15 through 20, I think I'm confused. Like, where are they reading these questions? I just want to make sure that, we're looking at what. So where are they getting 15 through 20 from?
Is that the 424 that they're asking about?
Yes, on the SF424 application.
Okay, if you can give me a minute, Christina, I might have those answers for that person. I just have to find it in my email. If you want to move on to the next question, perhaps.
Sure, great. Thank you, Melissa. And our next question is regarding the indirect costs. Our current indirect cost rate agreement has expired, and we are waiting for the updated document. If we do not have that before the deadline of March 30th, should we submit the most recent document now and then send the updated one once it arrives? And if so, how should we then submit the updated document once it arrives after the deadline?
So the first answer is yes. You should go ahead and submit the existing one that's expired. And then I'm going to defer to Dara to see if she can talk about the process of the updated one. Because I'm not certain about that piece.
So what will likely happen is, I'll admit we're still figuring out the new processes, working on, addressing budgets and stuff in the grants during the application phase with the new Just Grant system. If it's not addressed prior to the award, it most likely won't be. You'll have probably a special condition on your award withholding the portion of the funds for the indirect cost rate until we receive that. At that point in time, you'll work directly with whoever your program manager is for whichever purpose areas you've been awarded to do that. I think there's also, I'm going to say, and the ability to do this is, I apologize, I'm not sure if this you actually have the capacity to do this now, but it's something that we intend to do with the system, is the entity administrator can go in and add entity documents, and what the indirect cost rate can be attached as an entity document so that it's used for all awards. So that's another place to try and look for to see if you can do that, is update, add your new indirect cost rate agreement, even if you already have an award or whatever, into the entity documents, and that way somebody can access it for all of your awards. But otherwise, we'll just go ahead and work with you directly if you've received an award for an individual purpose area post-award.
Great, thank you, Dara. And go ahead, Melissa.
I have the answers to the applicant's question about the 424. I believe the applicant had questions from section numbers 15, 17, I think 18, 19, and 20. So I'll just keep talking. For section 15, you're just going to enter, and this is for the actual 424 within Just Grants application. But for box 15, you enter a brief description title of the project or projects for each purpose area that you're applying for. For box 17, that is where you enter the proposed start and end date, again, for each project, for each purpose area that you're applying for. For box 18, you're going to enter the estimated actual amount requested, again, for each purpose area that you're applying for. For number 19, the questions is whether this application is subject to review by state under executive order. If you Google state single point of contact, SPOC, I believe there is a list out there, and if you want to determine if whether or not you have a state POC contact, by looking at that list, you can answer that question to number 19. It just says applicants should contact the state single point of contact for Federal Executive Order 12372 to determine whether the application is subject to the state intergovernmental review process. And then you just select the appropriate box. And then for question 20, is the applicant delinquent on any federal debt? You just answer the question. The question applies to the applicant organization, not the person who signs as the authorized rep. And categories of federal debt include but may not be limited to delinquent audit disallowances, loans, and taxes. I think those are all, I think that's all the questions. If not, please let me know.
Great, thank you, Melissa.
Let's go ahead and finish the slides, and then we can go into some more questions. So we've gone over a general overview of CTAS and the structure and the GOJ components that manage each of the 8 purpose areas already. Now I'm going to take a moment to review each of the purpose areas under CTAS in a little bit more detail. I'll be looking at the overarching goals and some examples of allowable expenses. But please note that I will not be providing an exhaustive list of allowable items. This is just to give you an overview and an idea to help you start thinking about what purpose areas may be best suited to address the most pressing needs in your communities. So the COPS Office Purpose Area 1, which is the Public Safety and Community Policing Program. The goal of Purpose Area 1 is to address the most serious law enforcement needs in tribal nations and to implement and enhance community policing strategies. Applicants can request funds for hiring, training, and equipment to advance community policing and help address public safety concerns. Purpose Area 1 funds may support a broad range of costs, such as equipment, technology, overtime, travel and training, anti-meth and anti-opioid activities, and career law enforcement officers, including village public safety officers. As you can see, this is a very broad list, and for a complete listing of allowable costs and activities under Purpose Area 1, see the COPS 2021 allowable and unallowable cost list that can be found on the Tribal Justice website. I also want to mention that the COPS office anticipates awarding approximately $29.5 million in about 40 awards. Due to the limited funding available, applicants are restricted to funding based on the following parameters. With a sworn force of 9 officers and under, you can request no more than $500,000. Sworn force of 10 to 19, no more than $700,000, and a sworn force of 20 or more, no more than $900,000. Purpose Area 2 is called the Comprehensive Tribal Justice Systems Strategic Planning Program. It's a collaborative effort from all 5 DOJ components that participate in CTAS. However, it's overseen by BJA. While other purpose areas may focus on a particular area within public safety and justice, Purpose Area 2 is intended for a broad assessment of the tribe's current justice system and then producing a comprehensive strategic plan to further develop and enhance that justice system. Award recipients under Purpose Area 2 that develop and submit a plan that is approved by DOJ will receive priority consideration for CTAS funding to implement elements of that strategic plan in whole or in part in a following fiscal year or years when they submit applications in those purpose areas that are directly related to the strategic plan. And what that mouthful of words means is that after you complete a Purpose Area 2 project and have an approved plan on file with DOJ, for each purpose area that is directly connected to your approved strategic plan, you can request priority consideration for funding in that purpose area one time. And that is one time per purpose area that's directly connected to the plan, and it does not have to be in the same year. So that could be done whichever year you are ready to begin addressing a particular piece of your strategic plan that's related to one of the purpose areas. Then you would, in your application, simply state, we are requesting priority consideration for Purpose Area 3 this year, and you would put that in the Purpose Area 3 narrative and make sure that you attach the approved strategic plan to the application. Under Purpose Area 2, project funds may support a full or a part-time project manager to facilitate the planning process, and typically what we've seen is 75 to 100% of a FTE position is most effective. You can also include costs to provide community outreach, office supplies to run the program, and other support staff to help you achieve the goals of the project. This purpose area is supported with dedicated training and technical assistance providers who will work with grantees to establish their planning process, including working with you and your core team to come up with a common vision and goals as you move into this process, developing and administering the community needs assessment so that you can fully get a picture of both the resources and the needs in the community, and then the process of looking at those numbers, understanding what they're telling you, and then using them to inform a final written strategic plan that is unique to your community. What is not going to be allowable there is having an outside consultant come in to do a strategic plan for your tribe. This is definitely a project that needs to be driven from within the tribal government rather than an external professional coming in from the outside and telling you what it is that you need. We anticipate making up to $600,000 available through this purpose area and awarding up to 4 applications of $150,000 per award. BJA also oversees Purpose Area 3, which is the Tribal Justice Systems Program. Purpose Area 3 is a very broad-based purpose area, and funding can be used for just about any aspect of the justice system. A wide range of different projects, including service populations that include both adults and juveniles can be included, but it's important to note that projects that have an exclusively juvenile focus are not likely to be funded through Purpose Area 3, and instead you should look at Purpose Area 8 for those projects that are exclusively juvenile justice related, but you can look at projects that cover a larger spectrum under Purpose Area 3. Projects under this purpose area can focus on one or more aspects of the tribal justice system, including prevention, addressing violent or drug-related crime, healing to wellness courts, tribal law enforcement, courts, corrections, alternatives to incarceration, probation, and reentry. Under Purpose Area 3, funds may support activities such as the creation of a new or enhancement of an existing tribal court, conducting a risk or needs assessment, supporting reentry or prevention programming, or diversions or alternatives to incarceration, substance abuse prevention or treatment programs, working with, as Julia said, incarcerated populations within tribal jails. So as I said earlier, really just about anything within the tribal justice system has the potential to be funded through this area. And BJA anticipates making up to $20.6 million available through this purpose area, awarding up to 25 to 33 applications with a range of approximately $250,000 to $900,000 per award. Purpose Area 4, the Tribal Justice Systems Infrastructure Program, is also managed by BJA. The goal of Purpose Area 4 is to assist tribes with building or enhancing tribes justice system. The funds may support the renovation and or expansion of existing facilities or the establishment of prefabricated or permanent modular buildings to serve as correctional facilities, correctional alternatives or treatment facilities, multipurpose justice centers, including police departments, courts, and corrections, and transitional living facilities or halfway houses. Additionally, funds can be used to renovate correctional facilities that are no longer considered safe and secure to serve as detention facilities. Funds cannot be used to support new construction projects. Some examples of different Purpose Area 4 funded projects are on the screen. BJA anticipates making up to $8 million available through this purpose area, and they estimate 2 to 4 awards will be made for facility renovation or expansion or completion of existing construction projects, for approximately $1.2 million per award, and an estimated 1 to 2 awards for facility renovation or expansion or completion of existing construction projects for regional facilities for approximately $4.8 million per award. The Office for Victims of Crime oversees Purpose Area 6, which is the Children's Justice Act Partnership for Indian Communities. Projects funded under this purpose area will provide direct services and intervention to improve the handling of child abuse cases and the investigation and prosecution of cases of child abuse, particularly sexual abuse. Please note that due to the limited amount of funding available under Purpose Area 6, applications focused on the criminal investigation and prosecution of child abuse and neglect, especially cases of child sexual abuse, will receive priority consideration. Purpose Area 6 focuses on the investigation, prosecution, and handling of child abuse and neglect cases. Some examples of different CJA-funded projects would be child forensic interviews, pediatric sexual assault nurse examiners, an investigator or prosecutor to address special crimes against children, and a child advocacy center. This year, OVC expects to award up to 6 applicants for approximately $450,000 per award. Again, the applications focused on the criminal investigation and prosecution of child abuse and neglect cases will receive priority consideration. The Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention oversees Purpose Area 8, the Juvenile Tribal Healing to Wellness Court program. The overall purpose of this grant program is to support tribes seeking to develop and implement a juvenile tribal healing to wellness court to respond to alcohol and substance abuse issues, including opioid use, of juveniles and young adults under the age of 21. Juvenile tribal to healing wellness courts are special courts like drug courts that combine judicial supervision, substance abuse treatment, case management, drug testing, and graduated incentives and sanctions to help individuals with substance use disorders achieve sustained recovery and avoid reoffending. Juvenile tribal to healing wellness courts use a team approach that includes the judge, attorneys, probation, law enforcement, treatment providers, educational and vocational services, and other partners. In addition, juvenile tribal healing to wellness court teams can incorporate tribal elders, traditional healers, and other culturally appropriate resources to promote participants' healing and reintegration into the community. Some examples of different projects funded under Purpose Area 8 would include developing a juvenile tribal healing to wellness court that promotes physical and spiritual healing, utilizing a holistic, traditional, community-wide approach, building capacity for the tribe to implement evidence-based substance abuse intervention and prevention strategies with court-involved youth, development of an 11-member intertribal court. The Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention also oversees Purpose Area 9, the Tribal Youth Program. Purpose Area 9 funds, support, and enhance tribal efforts to prevent and control juvenile delinquency and strengthen the juvenile justice system for American Indian and Alaska Native youth. There are a variety of priority areas, including efforts at prevention, intervention, and treatment associated with this purpose area. It is recommended that tribes choose no more than one area in which to concentrate their proposal. Some examples of different projects funded under Purpose Area 9 would be after-school programs, diversion programs, truancy prevention and intervention, treatment services for children exposed to violence, and tribal best practice and traditional healing to support youth. OJJDP anticipates making $8.5 million available through this purpose area, awarding up to 17 applicants for up to $500,000 per award. And with that, we're going to go into the additional Q&A section. And I'm actually going to pose a question first because I unfortunately did not have it in my notes. Can one of our representatives from OJJDP share the anticipated funding amounts for Purpose Area 8, please?
I don't know if there's another question we can take while I pull that information up.
You bet. Our next question is regarding the SF424 and SFLLL. We submitted our SF424 and SFLLL on February 24th. We listed our SAM contact person as the main person. To date, they have not received a response, and they have been checking. They sent an email and have not heard back, but the status just keeps saying that they have an agency tracking number assigned. They're looking to see if the forms have been submitted, and they did follow up to say they did just receive a response from grants.gov asking if the SF424 and LLL were accepted. They said it is up to just grants, not grants.gov, to decide whether to accept an SF424, and that they have no further duties on this issue. So it looks like it would be that they would need to check with just grants.
Okay, so here, if the applicant can hear me, this is what I would tell you to do. My name is James Smith. My email address is james.a.smith@usdoj.gov. Send me an email, cctribalgrants@usdoj.gov. Explain the issue in detail to me. Include screenshots if you need to, and cut and paste the email responses that you've received back from just grants or from grants.gov, your communication with them. Send that to me, and I'm going to reach out to a Just Grants contact to see if I can get someone in touch with you to get the issue resolved. But it would be very helpful if I had all the pertinent information. So again, detailed issue of what's going on, and then the conversation between you and you and grants.gov, so that I can relay all of this to my Just Grants contact and see if we can get this resolved.
James, if I might also make a couple suggestions. One
Sure.
is to have whoever would have been the entity administrator, the SAM contact, and potentially the application submitter, make sure one to check your junk folder of your email, just make sure that any notifications that may have come from the systems may not have gone there. And the other thing is also just to try, it's for those people to try and log into Just Grants to see if the application is ready for you to submit in the system itself. But then otherwise, yeah, I would also follow up with James as well as the Just Grants support desk.
Great, thank you, James, and thank you, Dara.
And I'm still searching. I'm just waiting for my file to open up.
Hi, this is Heather McDonald.
Go ahead, Heather, if you have
Hi,
the
this
answer.
is Heather
Sorry.
McDonald. I've written the response in the group chat. The answer for Purpose Area 8 is we plan to award $2 million. That is approximately 5 awards, up to a maximum of $400,000 per award for 5 years per award. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Heather. And for our next question, we have, what if you have one authorized representative on the SF424, but that will change by time the whole package is due in Just Grants, and you do not know who that will change to until later in the month? Do you have any guidance on what they should do in this case?
I can try and flag this one again. It's Sarah. I think go ahead and whoever is your current authorized rep at the time, I think you're saying the concern is whoever's authorized rep at the time of submitting in grants.gov, but it might be different by the time you submit in Just Grants. Go ahead and use the current authorized representative. Once the application is in Just Grants, again, for any of the users, whether it's an application submitter or authorized rep, I believe at any point in time, those users can be updated by the entity administrator in the entity management through what we call the Diamond system through Just Grants. So those contacts can be updated as needed as they change. So if you want to change the application submitter, or if you want to change the authorized rep, those can be changed by the entity administrator in Just Grants. So I would suggest just go ahead once you're ready to submit the application, or even after you submit the application, to make sure that all your contacts remain up to date.
Great, thank you, Dara. And on the SF424, for the proposed project, what if you have multiple purpose areas that have different end dates? Would you choose the later end date?
You will just enter all of the end dates in that section. So you will enter the start and end date for each purpose area that you're requesting.
When you're submitting a grants.gov, again, just so that you know, that SF424 is essentially a placeholder. You'll do individual 424s for different award amounts, for different for project periods, for each purpose area when you submit in Just Grants. So that's where you're going to put the correct information for each individual SF424 in Just Grants. The grants.gov one is just a placeholder.
Great. Thank you, Dara. Thank you, Melissa. And how do we access the SFLLL form application? We have the SF424, but we can't seem to find the SFLLL.
I guess my question is, have they already done this in grants.gov? Because I was under the impression that those documents are in grants.gov. So for the person that asked that question, have you gone into grants.gov? Can you let me know if you see the documents there? I've never actually had to go in and do it, but that's always been my impression, that those documents are there. I don't know if any of my colleagues think or feel differently, but
I don't remember exactly, but if you go back, if you go to that YouTube channel that we keep giving you, you can access we did a specific CTAS webinar on how to submit in grants.gov and Just Grants. I forget the exact date, but it's on the OJP YouTube page, and they did a demo to walk through it, and I believe it's there, and that would be able to show you how to get to it. I apologize, I don't remember exactly how to do it.
And the Just Grants website has a DOJ application submission checklist, which is a very helpful document that was updated on February 19th. And it says step 2, apply in grants.gov, search for an open DOJ funding opportunity, complete and submit the required documents in grants.gov. The grants.gov the grants.gov portion of your application includes the 424 and SFLL. So it, as everyone just said, it's in there.
Great, thank you, everyone. And James, we're having a few people ask if it's okay if we repeat your email address, and can we include that in the chat for everyone?
Yes, james.a.smith@usdoj.gov. Again, james.a.smith@usdoj.gov. And I would just say one other thing for anyone who is emailing me, please make sure that if you're emailing me directly, copy the tribalgrants@usdoj.gov email address. And when you email me, please be very clear, name, how I'm able to contact you, what the issue is, any screenshots you may have if it's an issue that has screenshots, or if it's a situation where it's a conversation between you and grants.gov, or a conversation between you and maybe the Just Grants help desk. If I'm to help you, I'm going to need all that information. So just be very clear and succinct when you reach out.
Thank you, James. Our next question is about the SF424, and they're having an issue with the SF424 in that Section 8F, it asks who the person to be contacted regarding the application is. Typically, we would put in the project director here. I did that, but the person in the field is then listed as the application submitter in Just Grants. This happened to me, and my entity administrator reassigned the application to me as the application submitter, but I am unable to open the application. The issue has been escalated, but not resolved. Would it be better at this point to resubmit the grants.gov forms, or would that cause more issues?
That's a tough one. I really don't know how to answer. I think that I need to reach out to my Just Grants team and see, they're the experts on that, to get their advice. And I can certainly get an answer for the person. If that person wants to email me, let me know what the issue is and what exactly they need to know, I can get an answer to that. But I myself don't know, and I don't want to take a guess. I'd rather you have the correct information. So if you email me directly, I'll make sure that I find an answer for you.
Great. Thank you, James. And is Just Grants working on allowing more than one application submitter? I have to do 3 applications, 2 of which belong to the other tribal programs, not mine, and I'd like them to do it on their own if this capability is enabled.
You can only have one application submitter, but if you want someone else to work on parts of the application, the entity administrator needs to reassign the application submitter role to that person.
Great, thank you, Melissa. And can we use the naming convention all PA areas for documents that pertain to all program areas?
I'm not sure what they're asking. I think they're asking me if they're submitting a document that's going to, like, for instance, if they're, well, I really don't know what they're asking. So can you ask them to clarify? Like, I'm not sure if I followed the question.
Sure, I'll ask for additional clarifying information. While we wait, we do have another question, and that is, while we are trying to input our documents into Just Grants after getting the email confirmation that our SF424 and SFLLL was submitted, when we click on the CTAS grant, we don't see the begin button like it shows on the training video. Did our SF424 and LLL not get accepted? How can we tell?
I'm going to ask that person as well to just email me, send me what you received. I'll get it to our Just Grants team and tell them that we need an answer kind of like right away. Well, I mean, give me a day or two, but I will, if you get it to me today, I'll send it to them today and try to get you an answer. And I apologize that we've had to do that for the last few questions, but understand, like, we don't want to give you a wrong answer. We'd rather be 100% sure. We're not the tech folks, so we just want to make sure that we get you a clear answer on there and consult with them in case there's something going on in the back end that's messing things up that we're not aware of. So email me directly, include what you've received, include what your question is, how to get in touch with you, and we'll find out an answer.
Great, thank you, James. And our next question is regarding the indirect cost rate. Our indirect cost rate is with the NBC, but our tribe wants to reserve the right to charge the indirect cost rate when we have our rate established. How do you prefer for us to budget the indirect cost rate in this case?
I would recommend that you either use your current rate, if you have a current rate or expired rate, use that for budgeting purposes. Or if the agreement is close to being finalized with your cognizant agency, if you know what you anticipate the new rate to be, then I would use that particular rate for budgeting purposes. Again, until we have a signed active agreement, you won't be able to access that portion of the funds for indirect, but you can use it for budgeting purposes.
Great, thank you, Dara. And for purpose area 4, can we apply to replace a DOC security system, such as cameras, under purpose area 4?
Yes, this is Julius Dupree with the Bureau of Justice Assistance, and the answer to that question is yes. It would fall under the furniture, fixtures, and equipment category, or allowable item in the solicitation.
Great, thank you, Julius. And our next question is for the SF424. It has to be submitted before the Just Grants application. What if the budget in the Just Grants submission doesn't match the total in the SF424?
It's okay if they don't match. They don't have to match. Well, someone will reach, if it's at a point where you get awarded, someone will reach out to you. Someone will work with you on the back end. Please don't wait to submit that. Just get it in, and it will work itself out. I know we keep saying that, but it will. CTAS is just a little different, but it doesn't have to match. It can be an estimate, and it won't stop you from getting awarded if we decide to award your application.
Great, thank you, James. And the deadline for the SF424 and SFLLL in grants.gov is due by March 16th. Then can we go into Just Grants and turn in the SF424 and SFLLL for each individual purpose area by the 16th also?
So you don't have to worry about that deadline of the 16th for anything that you're entering in Just Grants. Make sure that you do it in grants.gov. I'm almost certain, I'm not almost certain, I'm almost pretty sure that the SFLL and the SF424 populate over into Just Grants.
Correct.
So just do what you need to do in there as soon as possible, before the 16th as possible, and then you don't have to worry about doing that on the 16th as well. Everything else that you're doing in Just Grants, you just have to make sure is done by or before 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Tuesday, March 30th.
Great, thank you, James. And what if you do not have any lobbying to list for the SFLLL? What would you do?
You still fill out the form, but just put NA wherever possible. If you don't have any, you still need to turn the form in, even if you have nothing to put there.
Great, thank you, James. And how do you go in to correct the new amount in Just Grants that was estimated from the SF424?
Eventually, when you are finishing up your Just Grants application, you will get a validation error that might say you need to make sure that the federal amount that you requested matches. So as you continue through the application, you will get a validation error, and then you can go back into the 424 section within the Just Grants application and just make sure that it matches up with what you put in the budget within the Just Grants application.
Great, thank you, Melissa. So for the SFLLL, if I'm using not applicable throughout the form, what do I do about the mandatory address that it's requesting?
You said it's asking for, I'm sorry, what did they say it's asking for?
So it looks like on the SFLLL, they did type in not applicable throughout the form, but it's asking for a mandatory address, and they're just looking to see what they should do for that mandatory address.
whoever asked the question, email me the form so that I can see. I haven't looked at it in a while, to be honest with you, so I can't remember it right now. But if I see it, I can probably advise you better, or I can definitely find out an answer. If you get that to me, I will work on having you an answer, hopefully by tomorrow or before then.
Great, thank you, James. So there's just a comment with grants.gov. It says that in grants.gov, there's a line and it shows what the system plans to type in there. They have grants.gov. They've entered the name of the project director instead of the AOR, which is typed in right above the signature line. So it seems hit and miss. Is there anything they can do there? So it looks like it's maybe putting in the project director name instead of the AOR in the signature line area.
Okay, and have they tried to reach out to Just Grants? Is this in? You said it's grants.gov. Have they tried to reach out to the grants.gov support desk?
I will follow up and check with them. And just as a few reminders, we do have the contacts for CTAS application resources listed on this page, including the Just Grants phone number and email address, the grants.gov email and phone number, also the response center. We do have the CTAS solicitation website listed here, as well as the online tool for preparing the CTAS solicitation. And we do have another question with what was said earlier about naming. If they don't know the names of the people mentioned in the budget, do we just make sure that the names mentioned in the solicitation match the names and titles that we are using in the budget? This was for applications should also include, the slide that has application should also include, along with the 3 required documents. The following information should be included in the application submission. So they're just looking to see if they don't know the names of the people mentioned in the budget, that if they should just make sure that the names mentioned in the solicitation match the names and titles they are using in the budget.
I don't fully understand the question, but I think I know what they're asking. And if my answer isn't addressing what you're asking, please feel free to ask the question again. So when you're working in the budget and you are looking to hire any type of personnel, it's okay if you don't know the person's, like whoever you're going to hire, if you don't know who that is yet. But what you absolutely must fill out is the title of what their title is going to be, or what position they are filling. And that position should be mentioned in your purpose area narrative. So hopefully that answers your question. So I'll give an example. If you are applying, I don't know, for, I'm just totally making this up, but let's just say you're going to hire, I don't know, you want to hire like a project coordinator. We need to know that you're hiring a project coordinator, but we don't need to know that it's James Smith if you don't know that it's James Smith right away. But what needs to match up is that in your budget, it needs to say you're hiring a project coordinator, and in your purpose area narrative, you need to also talk about that project coordinator in terms of, you know, why you're hiring them and what they're going to be doing, the purpose and the goals and all that stuff. That's where things need to match up, but you do not have to know the person's name yet. If you do know it, that's great. But if you don't, we don't need that. At least not, you know, for the purposes of submitting the application.
Great, thank you, James. And the follow-up for the grants.gov was just a suggestion, was that the system would show what it plans to enter, and then you would know what needed to be fixed before you hit submit. It looks like it was a suggestion.
Okay, well received.
And as a reminder, there are 2 upcoming deadlines. The grants.gov application deadline is Tuesday, March 16th by 9 p.m. Eastern Time. And the Just Grants application deadline is Tuesday, March 30th by 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Do any of our panelists or presenters have any additional tips that they would like to share?
I would just encourage everyone to get your application in early. I know I've said this earlier on, but if you can do 2 weeks, great. If not, at least a week. That allows you to hear from just grants. It allows for any issues to be resolved, and it also allows you to thoroughly review your application. You know, you don't want to do a rush job. Typically, when you rush, you either forget something or you submit something that you're not intending to submit. So spare yourself that headache and that stress by just trying to submit early. Also, make sure that when you're deciding what you're going to apply for and as you're working on your application, you definitely want to have all the templates handy, but as your guidance and your support, you want to make sure that you have the solicitation document itself and the purpose area spotlight document that kind of gives the meat and potatoes of all the purpose areas. It gives a lot more detail about each purpose area and the goals and objectives and allowables and unallowables that the new version of the solicitation doesn't give. So that's why we're encouraging you to have both of those things together as you're deciding if you're going to apply, what you're going to apply for, and as you're working on your application. Again, I'm going to reiterate the deadline one more time, March 16th, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for grants.gov in terms of submitting your SF-424 and your SF-LLL, but you guys are rock stars and you're going to do that today or tomorrow or anytime before the 16th. So just please get that in. Know that we are here to answer any questions that you have, but I issue that with a caveat. We are not allowed to look at and review any application materials, project narratives, budgets, and we can't look at that stuff. We can answer questions related to the solicitations and any resources and support materials and kind of unallowables and things like that, but we cannot review any of your materials. We're legally not obligated. We're legally not able to do that. So I just want to be clear, because every year occasionally we get folks that email us and they want us to look at stuff, and unfortunately we can't. Make sure that you look at the checklist. We have a nice YouTube website where you can go back and review some of the previous webinars. Review the Tribal Safety and Justice website, the CTAS page on there. We have those things there. If you are using the budget template, make sure to enable the macros. If it doesn't ask you to do it, look in the help section or Google to check to make sure that it's already enabled, because that will eliminate a lot of problems for you. If you do not use our budget template, make sure you have it handy, and whatever format you are putting your budget in, make sure that you are including all the things that we are asking for in the template that we provided. And the same is true of all of the templates. The purpose area narrative template, again, I would advise, if you want to answer it with the questions in. And if you want to delete them later, that's fine. But at least it allows you to make sure that you've answered all the questions. You absolutely must submit the purpose area narrative for each purpose area that you're applying for, filling out the budget workbook and including a tab for each purpose area you're applying to. And you want to do the tribal community and justice profile. Those three things are a must. If either one of those are left out, your application will not move forward. Although the timeline doesn't fit that requirement, you still need to do it. It's still scored, and it's still a valuable piece. So you want to make sure that you have that in there as well. The other thing I would say on the onslaught, that we're going to hope that nobody runs into technical issues the day of or as they're submitting, but sometimes those things do happen, whether it's a natural disaster or bad weather or just computer issues. In the event that any of those things happen and you reach out to us and you get strict instructions on what to do, you need to stop what you're doing at that point, and you need to follow the instructions to the T and do exactly what we're asking you to do. And I just want to be very clear about that, because we have issues every year and folks don't follow our instructions. We've come up with those instructions for you for a reason, and it's very important that you follow those. So again, if you end up having problems with submitting and you reach out to us for help and we give you instructions to follow, you need to follow those to the T. If we give you a deadline, additional deadline for submitting something, you need to make sure that you get it in by that deadline. And so I just want to be very clear about those things. Again, we're here to answer any questions. We prefer that you send those questions to tribalgrants@usdoj.gov. I know on every webinar I've provided my personal email address. I typically do that when I feel like it's a one-off issue that I really want to get resolved for the grantee. certainly have no problem with anyone emailing me, but if you do, please just make sure you include the tribal grants@usdoj.gov help desk, because we want to make sure that this is tracked more than just in my email. If you are reaching out to that tribal grants email address, or me or any other team member, full name, phone number, exactly what the issue is. If it's ticket numbers or anything of that nature, include that. If you have screenshots of errors, include that. Including that information helps us be able to help you in an efficient and effective manner, so we don't have to do a lot of back and forth. So just be as detailed as possible, and we're asking for that, because 9 times out of 10, when we reach out to our contacts to get help for you, they're going to ask us for that type of information. So it's better if we're proactive in the beginning and already have that.
Thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon, and I hope you have a great day.